Welcome back, everyone. It's me, Matt. You're about to get an amazing welcome from these Indian crew members on the T-90 tank as they do some live demonstration into blowing up a welcome sign, which I thought was pretty cool. The T-90. Yes, here we go, folks. Strap in. We're about to talk about one of the most talked about main battle tanks in the world, and one that really is just covered in negativity, and for some justifiable causes. I mean, it is a tank that we know in the Ukrainian conflict has had quite a bit of controversy, but it is still a tank that's fairly feared on the battlefield. It is clearly admired in many video games, including War Thunder, which I thoroughly enjoy. Sadly, I don't have the tank in War Thunder yet, I'm still grinding, and is showcased in grand parades. But is this polished pig or mechanical giant a true king of the battlefield, or is it a product of clever propaganda and culture hype? And I do really feel that this tank has been zeroed in on so heavily on YouTube, and ironically here we are once again talking about it, but I want to kind of deep dive into the fascination with the T-90 and its journey as a bit of a cultural icon, particularly for Russian main battle tanks. I'll talk a little bit about its design, its impact in the media, and how it's become more than just a bit of military hardware. It's a bit of a symbol, in all honesty, for Russian armored, doctrine, capabilities, and technology. One of the key bits of footage which really got me back into the juicy interest of the T-90 was that Bradley taking out the T-90 in Ukraine. Just the sheer amount of firepower from that 25mm just overwhelmed the crew, and we've seen lots of videos. I'm not going to deep dive into that situation, I'm not allowed to anyway, but it is really interesting to see such a formidable tank in the specification world be taken out by an IFV. So let's talk about the story of the T-90, and it begins in the 1980s during the twilight years of the Cold War. As the Soviet Union faced mounting technological challenges, the T-72 tank, once a symbol of strength, was becoming outdated. Enter the T-90, a project initially known as the T-72BU. It was designed to address the vulnerabilities of its predecessor while incorporating advanced technology, such as the Contact 5 explosive reactive armor and the Shatora 1 countermeasure system. Officially introduced in 1993, the T-90 became a symbol of Russia's commitment to maintaining military tank superiority despite its economic hardships, and in all honesty, this tank has been through quite a bit of development changes since its first conception. The T-90's design philosophy was a bit of a blend of proven systems and some new innovative solutions. It retained the compact dimensions of the T-72, making it a little bit more difficult to hit in a low profile, while adding advanced targeting systems like the ESSA thermal imaging suite, which was trying to catch up with the Western world of night fighting. The T-72 was certainly not adapted to its Western counterparts when fighting at night. With a beautiful 125mm smoothbore gun, which I truly feel is an incredible main battle tank gun, is capable of firing a huge range of ammunition, including the AT-11 sniper missile. The T-90 was also equipped to handle a very diverse battlefield threat, encompassing main battle tanks or armoured personnel carriers with the various different ammunition that it could put inside of there. It's interesting when talking to people about the confusion of the T-90s. People believe that the T-90 is based around the T-80, and this is just not the case. It's essentially an advanced evolution of the well-known T-72. In the former Soviet Union, it was customary to produce two tank models simultaneously, an advanced, expensive tank alongside a simpler, more economical main battle tank. This dual-tier approach was necessary to adequately equip the massive forces required for the Soviet army. The high-cost tank family began with the T-64 and was later succeeded by the T-80. The lower-cost mass-produced tank started in the early 1970s and was, of course, the T-72. It was not only the staple vehicle and tank for the Soviet forces, but primary export tank to the Warsaw Pact members, and it was widely distributed to nations such as Iraq, Iran, Syria, Algeria, Libya, and over a dozen others, making it one of the most widely used tanks of its generation. Furthermore, the T-72 was manufactured under the license in countries like Poland, India, and Czechoslovakia and the former Yugoslavia, with production continuing in some of these nations even to today. The T-90 represents the significant departure from the traditional T-72 design. It incorporates many of the advanced and sophisticated features of the T-80U tank while retaining a less expensive chassis, and that's where the confusion always lies. Additionally, its diesel power plant is more economical to upgrade and maintain compared to the beautiful gas turbine engine of the T-80, making the T-90 a bit of a strategic balance of capability and cost effectiveness. Over the years, the T-90 has seen several upgrades, including the T-90A, the T-90M, Prov V3, and these iterations boast improved firepower, armor, and electronics, solidifying a reputation as one of the best Russian tanks in service. Even though many of you absolutely despise it, I would agree, it's probably one of the best ones they have. However, it's not just the engineering that makes it stand out. How has this tank captured the world's imagination and focus so heavily? Well, the T-90, ironically, is in quite a bit of our normal culture. T-90 is in games like Call of Duty Battlefield and of course War Thunder. Clips from movies such as The Equalizer or other war films incorporate this tank heavily, particularly with those beautiful front red eyes. In the realm of entertainment, the T-90 is a bit of a star. War Thunder really focuses on this tank, portraying it very heavily against the Russian doctrine of tanks. But when we make it a bit of a household name among gamers, people start researching it and portraying it as this either near unstoppable force or complete pile of junk. YouTubers like Red Effect, who I absolutely love his channel, and many other YouTubers have really dug into the technicalities of the T-90, which we're not going to go into today because they just create really good videos about it. But when you're looking at a powerful gun, an imposing presence, those eyes, all the technology that's thrown on top of it, and a lot of people again call it a polished pig, it can be sometimes a favourite choice for players who want to kind of use it as a vehicle that they think is the underdog, but actually is one of the more formidable tanks in the gaming world. And that's why I think it's such a popular choice and why we see so much focus on it. Gaming has really brought tanks into the spotlight, whether it be War Thunder, World of Tanks. There's just so much more interest in tanks like the T-90 today. And of course, with the Ukrainian conflict, that blew up exponentially in the fact people wanted to learn more. Like I said, with that T-90 being engaged by a Bradley, that's a lot of interest. And that is kind of increasing the culture of the T-90's hype. And part of the answer also, I think, lies in the aesthetic. It's got a very angular turret with a bit of an imposing silhouette. Let's be honest, it's a very fast vehicle. It can bounce all over the place. We've seen the videos of them taking massive jumps, even though the crew inside of those tanks, I can't imagine landing a tank off some of those jumps. But beyond its appearances, the T-90 is often portrayed with an almost mythical status in games, with all the protection against, incoming RPGs and different armor packages, and of course the red IR lights on the front. And it's supposed to be capable of surviving near impossible odds, and this portrayal, while entertaining, is really not entirely accurate. And for instance, in War Thunder, the T-90's mobility and firepower are super overemphasized, while its weaknesses against modern anti-tank weapons are kind of downplayed. And this selective portrayal isn't unique just to the T-90, it's a common trope in media to elevate military hardware to legendary status. And unfortunately, the T-90 I don't believe you can really put into the legendary status realm. I would personally put the T-72 in the legendary status, because at the end of the day, it's just a very glorified T-72, and the T-72 has really been so combat proven and widely used through Russian tank history that I think it deserves that legendary status, which is why when you see the videos that I've made on it, I absolutely love the T-72. Now, in terms of a propaganda tool, Russian military parades have showcased the T-90 heavily, with promotional materials, new clips at arms expos, including historical parallels with other iconic military hardware. Beyond the battlefield and the screen, the T-90 serves as a bit of a crucial role in Russia's soft power strategy. It's a bit of a centerpiece when they want to showcase it, rolling through the Red Square as a bit of a symbol, I would say, of national pride and technological achievement. And it is. They've created something that is able to keep up with Western main battle tanks, certainly not in some of the later export versions, but the campaigns often highlight its affordability and reliability rather than its, defense or capability being, not penetrated by a thin round coming from a 120mm smoothbore Abrams, but it's a favourite among nations seeking advanced hardware with that huge price tag of Western alternatives, hence why you saw the footage of the Indians using them, because they're cheap, they can be mass produced, and sometimes numbers can outweigh technology. And I know many of you are probably screaming at the screen right now saying, no Matt, no, they have to be high tech. Well, not necessarily, right? Numbers can sometimes really make a huge difference. Countries like India, Algeria, and Vietnam have even tried to adopt the T-90 in a heavier configuration, upgrading it themselves, and it's not just the capabilities but the prestige associated with owning a tank of such renown that are similar to the T-72s. Russia's arm manufacturers have also capitalized on this, turning the T-90 into a lucrative export seller, and it does sell very well. But the T-90's image carefully curates for an international appeal, and it absolutely does that. The tank is not just a weapon, it truly is a statement. When you see a T-90 with those two front lights, and knowing that it's got all the armor packages and upgrades on top of that turret, you know that whoever has it does have a little bit more money in their pocket than just a standalone buying of T-72s or T-80s, but crews aren't really super fearful of it around the world because they do know of its weaknesses. The side-by-side comparison of media portrayals and real-world performance include different combat footage and analysis from military experts. There's so much comparison now. We always say what's going to win, the T-90 or the Abrams, or sometimes there's even analysis of a T-80 versus a T-90, or, same Russian tanks versus Russian tanks. The real-world performance, though, is a more of a nuanced story. In Syria, it demonstrated resilience against modern threats, such as guided missiles, thanks to its Contact 5 armor. However, as all tanks are, it wasn't invincible. Reports of T-90s being damaged or destroyed by advanced anti-tank systems reveal vulnerabilities that are often glossed over in media depictions. In Ukraine, the T-90's deployment has really sparked debate about its effectiveness in modern warfare, particularly against drones. And this is why it's really unfair to kind of poise tanks into a how good or how good they're not when drones are attacking them, because we've seen Western-made battle tanks that are a lot more advanced, a lot more armored, being taken out by drones too. So it's not a fair comparison with the fiction and reality when it comes to drone warfare. And while it's a formidable tank, the realities of logistics, crew training, and countermeasures play a significant role in determining its success. The myth of the invincible T-90 is just that. It's a myth. And a lot of Russian, I would say, fanboys, and no offense to you all, again, I love this tank, will say, oh, it's got all these upgrades and it's a fantastic tank. I would agree, but it's not as invincible as an incredible, I think, that we see in the culture of what it's portrayed to be today. Amongst tank enthusiasts, though, the T-90 is a very polarizing subject. Some see of it as a bit of a modern tank design, while others argue it is a completely overhyped relic of a bygone era. And I love scrolling through online forums that are filled with debates, ranging from technical specifications to its performance in the battlefield, hypothetical scenarios, and these discussions often reflect a mix of admiration, skepticism, and pure national pride. Interestingly, the T-90's reputation varies significantly on where you look. In Russia, it's celebrated as a symbol of strength, and of course in the West, it's often viewed with a mix of respect and pure criticism, and sometimes I think a little too heavily. This divide highlights a powerful role that perception plays in shaping the legacy of tank hardware. For instance, the T-90, when placed against a Abrams, apples and oranges. We're talking about totally different platforms, and yes, they were designed to take on one another, but the T-90 is an old vehicle. It has not been upgraded to a modern standard to say SEP Abrams. It's just not. It's apples and oranges, and we're starting to see the 140mm, 130mm tanks coming out nowadays with the new advancements in technology. The T-90 is not going to be able to keep up with that. It was never designed to, and that's where, again, people say, well, the T-90 is going to be easily destroyed. Well, of course it's going to be. It's not designed to take on those tanks. The T-90's journey from the battlefield workhorse to a cultural icon, I think, is a bit of a testament to the power of perception. Whether you're playing in video games with it, it's starring in propaganda, or sparking debates among enthusiasts, the T-90 is more, in my opinion, than just a tank. It's a bit of a symbol of innovation, power, and in some cases, myth-making. I do personally feel that the T-90 is an incredible bit of hardware, but it is way past its time for trying to keep up with modern technology. We cannot compare apples to oranges. It's not fair on the tank. It's not fair on those who have designed it to say, well, of course it can't keep up with modern main battle tanks, because yes, it's not a modern main battle tank, and that's another perception we see is, well, the T-90 is Russia's best main battle tank. It's really not. And again, Russian doctrine is very different to Western doctrine. Pure numbers tends to be, still as of today, the heavily focused tank doctrine, whereas we're seeing Armada coming in with more crew protection. Armadas are not being produced in the level or numbers that the T-90s and even T-80s were produced, and T-72s still are a massive bulk of the tank force, and we are so focused on drones right now that the T-90 is being strewn in just negative thoughts. Oh, it's so bad, it's easily knocked out by a Bradley. Again, doctrine, tactics, crew members, training, there's so much more involved when it comes to what a tank is capable of. But is it true of a legendary status? I don't believe it's a legend tank. I really don't. I think the T-72, its long-lost cousin, is truly a legendary tank. Is it the most formidable capable? No, but I do believe it's one of the most combat-proven, battle-tested tanks in history. and it's another puzzle in the grand narrative of military history for Russian tanks, and there's so much discussion about them, which is why I love doing videos like this. If you have comments about the T-90, let me know in the comment section below. I do read nearly all of your comments and love to interact and talk to you guys as much as I can. Some of the comments you guys make are really brutal. Some of you are pretty beaten up on one another. Don't take this to heart, folks. Again, I have huge respect for Russian tank design, and I don't condone war, I don't condone conflict. This is purely focusing on the equipment and the engineering and the technology behind these pieces of equipment and hardware, not the actual battles they're involved in. So hopefully you can be nice and kind in the comment section. If you could also be so kind as to leave me a like for this YouTube channel, it really helps with the algorithm, which is fighting me so heavily right now. So I appreciate you all supporting me, and those have been financially supporting me too on Patreon and PayPal. It really means a lot. Thank you so much. And of course, if you are a subscriber, click the bell so you can be notified of any upcoming videos in the future. Have a wonderful day, everyone. All the best. Bye-bye.